Well, let's talk about urges
Yeah.
because you have so many tools. It is unbelievable. In fact, we're going to link to this, but you've got 12 different tools or steps to coaching the people that you work with to control their urges. Can you walk us
hmm
through that?
Yeah. So I want to start with the word control because I
Uh-oh.
think a lot of times people come to this work and they think, oh, yeah, controlling my urges would be I can make them go away.
Oh, you can't?
Yeah. Well, unless you can get rid of your lower brain, we're not going to be able to make the urge go away. But
Okay.
notice how you're a little disappointed when I said that to you.
Yes, very.
Why are you disappointed?
Because it would be nice if I didn't like have any urge, because then there would be no conflict because I wouldn't be thinking about it.
Why?
Uh, I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
like for example, I don't ever have an. I used to eat Big Macs. Okay, no offense to McDonald's, but I used to love a Big Mac and an extra large fries. I would have the urge for it all the time. I haven't had the urge to eat a Big Mac in probably 2 decades, and I'm good with that.
hmm
I don't know if I actually would want to not have an urge for alcohol because right now I realize that that urge signals that it's time to turn off my brain. It's time to do something fun. And so what you're basically saying, if I'm now reading between the lines, is that I think the urge is for alcohol. You're saying go a layer deeper.
Yeah. Saying what if it's has useful information for you?
Wow.
So
That's true.
controlling to me is my ability to manage and influence what's going to happen next.
Hmm.
It's not, I got to delete every urge and make sure that they never appear and they must go away because they're bad and they're annoying and I can't say no to them. It's like, well, I can have the urge. That urge can come up. Then what? And that's where I think, the messages that we get, certainly, just say no doesn't do a lot of good because then all of a sudden I'm at war with the urge. All of a sudden it's become a battle.
Mm.
And as soon as I think I'm at war with something, now it's got power.
It's so true. It's so
As
true.
opposed, yeah, as opposed to like, okay, of course the urge is here. Or even just, I mean, one of my first things really is just naming that you're having an urge. And when I introduce that to people, it's always like, what is this woman talking about? Like, you just want me to say, oh, I'm having an urge. And I think it's incredibly powerful and beneficial because all of a sudden we're activating our higher brain. All of a sudden, we're not just on autopilot, we're narrating what's going on. Oh, this is an urge. Of course, I'm having an urge. It's 5 o'clock. My brain learned this is what we do. We get a reward at 5 o'clock. Of course, it's here. Because so often, what happens with people is that the urge shows up, and when you want to change, right? If you're trying to say no, if you want to drink less, all of a sudden it's like, oh God, the urge is here. And now my anxiety
Hmm.
has just kicked on too, because I wish it wasn't there and I wish it would go away. And I think that it's a sign that something is wrong with me or my brain is broken
Right.
or whatever. And so, like, can we just name it? Can we normalize it? Like, yeah, of course you're here. Of course, when I watch baseball, I'm having the urge for a beer because at some point my brain learned this is what you do when you watch baseball.
What's so great about this is that whether you use the process that you've created and it leads you to becoming sober and living a sober life, it's still empowering you to understand the psychological drivers so you
Mm-hmm.
understand and know yourself better. And that supports the work you're going to do if you are sober. Or if you go through all of this and where it leads you is to just a totally different relationship with alcohol that works for you, you still have to do the deeper work to understand what are the urges and psychological data that is driving you to try to answer the urge with a drink.
Mm-hmm.
That's really amazing.
Well, I mean, I think everything I'm teaching, yes, it's through the lens of alcohol and drinking and wanting to change that relationship. But to me, like, this is just a skill that we need across the board, right? Because we don't just have urges when it comes to a drink. We have urges around food. We have urges around spending money. We have urges to procrastinate. Like, we're always going to have competing desires, right? We always have this part of us that has the dream and the goal, and this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to spend my time. And we have the part of us that's like scrolling through TikTok, right? And looking for that easy way to distract ourselves or feel better or stay in our comfort zone. And so that's always going on. And I personally think that learning this work around my urges to drink is what kind of took my life to the next level, because it was like, oh, okay, now I can apply the skill to anything that I'm doing. It's not unique to just, saying no to a drink. It's not unique to alcohol. It's, something that I can apply across the board.
It's an essential life skill.
Yes. And we don't teach people. Like, this is what's so frustrating for me is we're constantly giving people messages: just say no, drink responsibly, enjoy in moderation, know when to say when. We're getting all these messages about what we should be doing, and nobody gives us the how. Nobody explains how we're supposed to do it. And so I think what happens is people start to internalize, this should just be something I can naturally do. I should instinctually know how to say no, be responsible, right? Know when to say when. And if I can't figure it out, oh, something must be wrong with me. As opposed to, no, people gave you a bunch of messages with no tools, no techniques, no understanding about the brain. I mean, that really infuriates me.
I can tell. And I'm glad you got mad because you figured out how to help all of us. So I wanted to know, so we're at this, like, you name the urge, and it sounds like, what do you mean by name the urge? So let's just take, for example, the second that we are done, the second I'm done talking to you, it's going to be dinner time. I'm going to leave my podcast studio. I'm going to look out at a beautiful sunset, and I'm going to have an urge to make a margarita.
Yep.
So when you say name the urge, is just saying, did I just do that?
No, I'm like, when it's happening.
Oh,
and
okay.
I love
it's happening right now because now I'm talking about it. But okay.
I love the sunset piece though, because like the number of people that I have coached on, like, how am I supposed to sit on my porch anymore and like enjoy a sunset? And it's like, sunsets were enjoyable before you started drinking, right? The brain started to associate, oh, I get a reward when I watch a sunset. So now when you take the reward away, it feels like something's missing from the sunset. Nothing's missing from the sunset, right?
Okay, you're right. Except for the drink.
Right. Except
I'm making a joke out of this, but it's not, I'm not really this cavalier about it, but I do feel like there's two camps here. It's poison. Nobody should ever drink. Drinking is a problem. I can already feel people who listen to the podcast who are sober, and it is a really powerful choice for them, who are sober, and it's extremely powerful for them being upset by this conversation. And so I just want to say something, and that is, this is a much deeper conversation than alcohol. And I want more people to listen to what you're saying than just people who think they have a problem with alcohol. Mm-hmm. I want every human being to listen to this conversation and feel like this applies to you, because it does. Because you're talking about the subconscious drivers that create your relationship to food, to alcohol, to money, to all of your behaviors, by the way. And alcohol is just one piece of this. And I'm going to keep on making jokes, because I think when I make a joke that now I'm thinking about the margarita, which is true, most people that have alcohol in their life actually operate that way. Mm-hmm. When you see the sunset, you're thinking about the drink you're going to have tonight. Yeah. And so when I leave here and I have the urge, I just, as I'm walking downstairs, I say, oh, I'm having that urge to make a drink.
Yeah. So you can say it to yourself, you can say it out loud. Both of
Okay.
it works. The idea is really just acknowledging what's going on. Like, oh, this is an urge. I'm having an urge right now. This is desire. Oh, how normal. Of course it's here. Right? This isn't a problem. This is what my brain learned. I mean, I think of the number of times that I would watch Mad Men
Oh,
and like immediately be like, I mean, I'm fixing a cocktail and smoking a cigarette right now, right? And but there was no I was kind of on autopilot and I just didn't have that full awareness of what was going on as opposed to like, oh, of course. This is desire. Of course, I'm having an urge to fix a cocktail and smoke a cigarette right now because I'm seeing it in front of me and I'm seeing it presented in this very like, sophisticated, enjoyable way. So it really is just starting to narrate. I think that's a very, very powerful thing to start to be able to narrate what your brain is doing because all of a sudden you're not at the effect of your brain.
right.
Part of you is watching it. And I will just add on the piece about like it's poison and it's terrible. I I'm I really caution people about that. I know that there are people who find that very effective.
Mm-hmm.
They go down the kind of rabbit hole of all the ways that it's harming you and it's bad for you. And I'm not denying that it can have negative consequences. But what I see happen to people, and I did this with myself as well, you start going down that rabbit hole of all the ways that it's harming you and all the, poisonous toxic effects that it's having on your body, and you're still struggling to say no, or you're still drinking more than you want, and now you're waking up the next day and you're like doubly stupid because now you really should know better. So not only was it like, oh God, why did I have that like fourth glass, and I know all the harm that it's doing, and I know how bad it is
Yeah.
for me.
Yep.
And so there's already so much shame around drinking. There's already, people are so hard on themselves. It just becomes like another layer of, see, something really is wrong with me because now I know how bad it is. I know it's poisoning me. As opposed to like, listen, alcohol is just, it's a fact of being alive on this planet, right? It existed before humans learned how to harness the process of fermentation, right? So it's just part of being alive. So what if instead of fixating on it's so bad, right, the bad things that it's doing, I think that takes you away from this conversation that I think is more powerful, right? What does it represent? What is my desire really about? Why is it hard for me to say no? How do I feel when, I'm the odd man out, right? What are those emotions that come up for me? That is so much more powerful area, I think, to start to get curious about rather than all the bad things that it's doing.
Well, I agree with you. And even when you said the word name, that it's a desire. And when I gave that example of it's dinner time, the sun is setting, I'm going to make a cocktail. The truth is the desire is to stop working.
Mm-hmm.
The desire is to exhale and stop thinking for a minute. The desire is to reward myself for a job well done. And in naming that, it also takes my focus off the drink, and it helps me get present to what I actually want.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I do, actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I have like a little picture of me as a 4-year-old looking very grumpy on my phone. It's like all around my house. I've got a big one over my office. I've got it on a couple of mirrors. But the reason why I have it is because it's much easier for me to connect to that younger version of myself and say, what does she need? Because so often my internal conversation is like, well, you're not supposed to need anything. Right? What are you complaining about? Right? You're an adult. But if I think about like, what is she needing right now? Right? When she's tired, when she's having desire, when she's frustrated, like what does she need in this moment? There's so much easier for me to answer that question on behalf of her rather than, 42-year-old Rachel, who you shouldn't need anything. And, you should be able to push through and you should be able to get more done and you have nothing to complain about. And you should be grateful for all these things that you have in your life. It's like, no, she has some needs and that's okay.
What immediately came to mind is I need a hug.
Yeah. But isn't that harder to ask for sometimes than a drink?
Well, you can't order one from a waiter. It's true. And I can make myself a drink, so I don't have to ask for anything, right?
Yeah.
But I can
Yep.
see that when you showed me that picture of yourself, and I think about myself, like what if I go to the 14-year-old me, that red Solo cup represented a hug and being welcomed into the group.
Yep.
And so I can see what you're saying, that there is a desire to name when you feel that urge that is deeper than the food or the drink or the pair of jeans you're about to buy, that goes way deeper. And that's what's driving it. And so, of course, you would want the thing. And of course, not giving yourself the jeans or the ice cream sundae or the Mai Tai feels like you're punishing yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. So once you kind of label this desire and you start working through it, what are some of the things that once you've labeled it, you need to do so that the urge or this desire doesn't continue to drive you, but you start to change your relationship to the desire or the urge that you're having?
Yeah. I think a big thing is just watching it pass. So that's a huge thing that a lot of people struggle with. It's like, listen, if I don't say yes, it's going to be nagging me all night long.
Can I confess something to you?
Of course.
Is it normal for someone to be worried that you're about to tell me not to have a drink tonight?
That I'm about to tell you?
Yes, that you're about to
Yeah.
coach me through this process of noticing the urge, letting it rise and fall. And then at the end of this, I'm now going to have more conflict about the urge. And then you want to know how fucked up I am? Then I'm going to feel like this is now all evidence that I have an even bigger problem. That's how much of a shame cycle I'm in around this.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to argue that what the fuck is wrong with one goddamn drink? Why did you book Rachel on this show? See, like I'm really torturing myself over. Is this normal? Is this what you see in the
Yes.
people you work with?
Yes, this is very normal. I'm not going to tell you anything to do when it comes. I mean, I think that's actually a huge piece of my approach is that I don't know what's best for you. I'm not going to tell you what to do because you're just going to be then looking to me or looking for someone outside of you to tell you what's right. I think you have wisdom and information inside of you. And that's not like a wink, wink, you shouldn't drink. I really do think that we have this ability to know what feels good for us and what feels like too much, but we can't access that if it's constantly in this place of like, oh God, I shouldn't even be wanting this, or I shouldn't even have this desire.
I love your approach because I can tell you that in my 20s, 30s, and early 40s, I definitely had a drinking problem. No question. No fucking question. Whether it was the lever I pulled to relieve anxiety, or it was escaping the shit show that my life had become when we were in financial trouble, or it was just a deep, I think, sadness and feeling lost and disconnected, and how alcohol can make you social and make you fun and make you forget all that stuff, and just sort of that constant cycle of drinking and then regretting that I drank and regretting what I said. And as I go deeper and I think about the person that I am now and the fact that, especially having a husband that doesn't drink, if he's not having a drink most nights, I don't have a drink. And I've wondered, especially given that I have a much healthier and balanced relationship with it, why the hell I am so conflicted. Why am I not proud of myself that I have gotten this to a point where it's not a problem, and it hasn't been a problem for a long time. And what I'm realizing is that it's so much deeper because it's about these desires and emotional needs that I've
Hmm.
paired with alcohol.
Yeah.
And that I, at a fundamental level, make myself wrong for wanting things. And because I can't tolerate the desire riding up and not fulfilling it, like you reach for something. Because you know what's interesting? I bet if I were to do something, I bet if I were to just play the urge game, I would notice something.
Hmm.
And I bet this is what I would notice. I bet that on the nights that I don't drink, just because I'm not going to have a drink alone and Chris isn't drinking or I don't feel like having one, I guarantee you, I probably buy something I don't need. Or I eat a big dessert. That I am probably so blind to the desire that rides that comes up in me that I don't even realize I'm just substituting one thing for another.
Yeah, I got so much freedom out of that. I'm really understanding that I was so fixated on my drinking for so
Mm-hmm.
long. And then was like, wait a minute, maybe it actually has nothing to do with my drinking. Like maybe it's the way that I approach trying to fulfill my needs and meet my desires and deal with, negative emotion and give myself permission to have pleasure. And it was showing up in so many areas of my life, right? Like I
Mm.
didn't think more is better just with, a drink. I thought it was better with food. I thought it was better with stuff. I thought it was better with success. I thought it was better with, money. I thought it was better with praise. Like that was just kind of the overarching principle of how I was operating.
Hmm.
And it wasn't just showing up for me in one place. And that, I think that created a lot of freedom for me because I walked around for a long time being like, I don't know, I've got like 8 different problems. Like, or not. Or maybe I have one thing that I'm working on, which is how to understand, like identify how I'm feeling and what I need and how to be okay with an unmet desire and how to fulfill it elsewhere.
That is incredible what you just said. That there is one supermax problem underneath it all. And it's your unmet emotional needs and how you are fulfilling them and your ability to tolerate those moments when your unmet emotional needs go unfulfilled like that. That you're exactly right.
It's just like such a relief was for me to be like, oh, it's just one thing. I'm just working on one thing.
How
That's
did
it.
you figure this out? Like, was there a particular moment? Like, did you have like a massive bender and then you're like, I can't drink again? Then you like reverse engineered this? Did you go to school for? How did you figure this out?
So I spent my 20s going like back and forth between I'm drinking, I'm not drinking, I'm drinking, I'm not drinking. But the not drinking was always you were bad, you should be ashamed of yourself. Now it's time to punish yourself. We're just going to focus on saying no. And so I would say no and feel like something was wrong with me and I was missing out and I, was very healthy but wasn't enjoying myself as much. And then eventually I would, give in and go pick up right back where I left off. And so I was in this process in this cycle for so long. And I think I had some awareness that it was bigger than the drink. I don't know how, but
Mm.
I think because I understood that I felt like I wasn't able to access a part of myself without the drink. I
Mm.
I remember believing that like the fun Rachel, the real Rachel, like she comes out with a drink. And again, there was a part of me that was like, I don't think I always needed that. Right? Like we may have to go very far back in time, but there was a much younger version of myself who felt comfortable in her skin and wasn't so worried about what people thought and wasn't always trying to avoid making mistakes. Like that version of me existed at, maybe I was 3 or 4. I was very young, but I I had that sense that she had been there and somehow I had lost her.
Hmm.
And so I think it felt like, okay, I need to figure out a way to return to that. I need to figure out a way to get that back. And I will tell you, the work of Brene Brown, I found incredibly powerful, because she talks about numbing. She talks about like all of the things that we try to use. So she talks about like, I remember this one paragraph where she's talking about like the chips and queso and the cigarettes and the beer and the, perfectionism and like all these things. And that, I remember reading that being like, oh, that's me. That's what's going on. So, I started doing this work. I started learning about it. I decided I wanted to become a coach. And I mean, that's really how I got here. That's really kind of the journey that I was on. I think in part, I was very frustrated that we have such a limited, narrow conversation how we talk about this. It's kind of like, do I have a problem or don't I have a problem, right? Am I an alcoholic or am I a normal drinker? We're very black and white. And I think there are a lot of people that feel like they're in this kind of in between, and being in that in between can feel incredibly frustrating. And it's like, nobody understands my situation or what's going on for me.
Yeah. And because it's been framed as two extremes, that always makes you feel like, one's bad, one's good. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's been really challenging to try to locate yourself. So when somebody comes to you and they say, I just want to figure out what a normal relationship with alcohol means for me, whether that means I never drink again, whether it means I have boundaries around it, whether it means I stop making myself wrong about it. What is the process you put somebody through, and how do we start it for ourselves?
Yeah. I think that one of the most important things to do is really first understand your mindset. And when I say mindset, I mean, when you think about, well, what are my reasons for drinking? And what do I make it mean that I struggle to say no? Right? What do I make it mean when I struggle to follow through on my commitment? What about the idea, even if this isn't where someone's going to land, but like, if you think about being told that you couldn't drink again, what about that would be upsetting for you? Because when you start asking these questions, it's going to reveal some of your like big, overarching thoughts about yourself, your ability to change, your urges, alcohol, all of that.
Can we take some of them, and can you share some of the common things that you hear?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, over and over again, the thought that people have that I also shared is like, I'm just an all or nothing person. I think I have an addictive personality. I think I'm just very compulsive with my behaviors. I also had I think my brain is missing an off switch. So when I ask people, well, what is the struggle about? It's always pointing to something kind of wrong with me, defective with my brain. Some part of me is not functioning correctly, as opposed to, what I'm trying to help people see is like, what are the tools you need, right? Like, what are the skills that you need to be able not only to be curious about your urge, but also to allow yourself to have this unanswered desire and not make it into a problem or something terrible that we have to avoid. But yeah, I'm an all or nothing person. That's a pretty common one.
I also, like, as you were saying some of these questions, I was thinking, well, what does it mean? Like, because you asked one about what does it mean to have a drink? Like, I started thinking about all these situations like, well, it's celebratory. It is, like you're celebrating somebody. It's something you do in groups. It's a lot of fun. It's a way to bond with somebody else. It's a way to enjoy something. I have a lot of like, I don't want to miss out. Like if somebody opens up, like we were at a friend's house the other night, and they opened up one of those super expensive French bottles of wine where you have to like push the gray dust off of it that had been gifted to them by somebody. And I'm like, ooh, I'm not going to miss out on that. Like I wasn't I hadn't had a drink that night, but the second they pulled that out, it's like the gene of FOMO. This is going to be expensive. I'm going to try this shit. And so when you think about excuses, And the big question that you asked at the end, which is what was the big question? Because it made my heart go, oh God.
Oh, like if you couldn't drink again, right? If it was like, sorry, Mel, we're telling you, you can't drink for the rest of your life.
I would feel like I'd never have fun again.
Yeah.
Like I'd miss out on all the celebrations.
I mean, I was like, I'm sorry, how are we supposed to watch March Madness? Like, what? Am I ever going to have sex again? I don't understand. Like, what? Like, they were just so, I was like, are you kidding? So, am I ever going to go to a wedding? Should I just not go to weddings anymore? I'm not going to have sex. We're not going to enjoy sports. Like, I guess I'm never going to dance, in public. I mean, there were just like so many things. I was like, well, you got to be kidding me. Like, you're literally talking about a miserable life. So yeah, no, thank you. I'll pass.
So what do you do if that's everything that you think? How do you handle the excuses? Because obviously none of that's true. That's just a story you're telling yourself. And part of your methodology is getting you to go deeper than the thing that you are reaching for, and getting to go deeper around these stories and these excuses that you have and understanding it. So when somebody fills all that out and they're like, okay, I'm never going to have sex. I'm not going to dance in public. I can't go to a sports game. My life will be no fun. All my friends who drink won't ever invite me out. I'm going to endure awkward moment after awkward moment where everybody else orders a drink. And I'm like, could I have a seltzer, please? Can I have the mocktail menu? And you feel like, all of that. And I don't want to miss out on all the fun. And I don't want to do, like, when you write out your excuses, that almost makes you feel like you would retreat toward binge drinking.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, we have nothing to look forward to, right?
Yes.
So one of the things I talk about in all those situations that I listed, like the worst thing that's going to happen is a feeling.
That's true.
So, but I don't think we understand it that way. We're like, no, the worst thing that's going to happen is my life is going to be over.
Yes.
So you start to be like, okay, so what is that feeling that comes up when I get on the dance floor, right? Totally sober. What is that feeling that I'm having when I'm sitting in the stands watching baseball and everybody has a beer and I don't? Right? Like, what is that feeling? Like, to start to identify the real issue here is not the drink. The real issue is this feeling that it's like, oh God, if this comes up, then there's nothing to do. Right?
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is I'm realizing that the more that you apply this to your life, the more that what you're doing is you're just teaching people how to handle the feelings that come with not reaching for what you normally reach for in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, it starts even just with like identifying what the feeling is, because that's a huge piece of what I had to do a lot of work on. Because I was like, first off, feelings are gross. Why are we talking about them? Ew. I'm not a touchy-feely person. So that was my like starting point. Can we just like, let's talk about something logical, not be in this like touchy-feely emotional stuff. But then, I was just like, I'm fine. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. I'm fine. Like that. I didn't even really have the ability to articulate what was going on a lot of the time. That's a huge piece that I work on with people. It's like, okay, fine's not a feeling. Like, how are we actually feeling? So again, much like your urges, the ability to just name and notice and also not make it a problem. Like, I feel disappointed right now. How human of me. That's okay. We're supposed to feel disappointed sometimes. I can feel disappointed now because I'm not having the drink, or I can feel disappointed later because I didn't follow through on my commitment. But disappointments come in either way, so which one am I going to choose?
I'm reflecting on moments of my life in the last couple of years where I didn't drink. And, wouldn't have it, whether it's dry January or doing various challenges for a couple months. And everything that you're saying is exactly right, because I would have these urges come up from 5 to 7 at night. And the second that I got through that sort of the wave of feeling, and like I didn't feel like having a drink anymore. Mm-hmm. Because it wasn't about the drink. It was about the desire of feeling a boundary with work, or a desire to join in, or a desire to feel that liquid hug, or a desire to just be comforted. And it did pass. I guess what I want to make sure that anybody listening has is, if you're like me and I feel much calmer now. I feel like I understand what the work actually is. If I want to get curious about what would a relationship with or with alcohol really look like for me, that's very empowering.
Mm-hmm.
But for anybody listening, what is the place to start? Like, how do you even begin this inquiry if it doesn't involve not drinking for 30 days? Like, what do you recommend your clients do when somebody comes to you and they're as like spun around as I was when we started this conversation? Should I? Shouldn't I? I don't know. Is it poison? Is it this? Is there something wrong with me? Maybe there's something wrong with me. What's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Why shouldn't I have one? Like, just where do you begin when you're in the middle of this very conflicted normal relationship with alcohol, which most people are in? I think most people live there.
Yeah, I agree. And I start people with really just starting to learn about urges, learn about the brain, right? Learn about, I've got a higher brain and I've got a lower brain and they've got different priorities, because this is a piece that most people just have no awareness of because we're not taught anything about it. And I think really just learning, like getting some basic information, that is the best place to start. It really is, because I think it does kind of like dial back the intensity of it. Because it's like, oh, wait, so you're saying that an urge is normal and not a problem and doesn't mean that I have to wear a label for the rest of my life? And right, it's just like dialing that back can be really powerful. Understanding, oh, I have competing desires. This is normal.
Oh my God, I just got something. I just got something really powerful. Holy shit. I just realized the hidden frickin' superpower in what you're talking about, which is if you focus and become very curious about the desire that comes up, the urge that comes up, the emotion that's underneath it all, the kind of story that you tell yourself, you direct your attention to that exploration, which is so important, because here's what I'm realizing. Do you want to know why I always lose the battle with myself when I wake up in the morning and I say, I'm not having a drink tonight? Or I start a Sunday night and I say, I'm not going to drink this week. I'll just wait until next weekend. And then Monday rolls around, 6 o'clock. I go downstairs. It's the sunset. I feel the desire to pour a gin and tonic because this is my boundary between work. I now understand what it is. When I start to get in conflict with myself, Rachel, well, you said you weren't going to have a drink, but I feel like having a drink. What's wrong with having a drink? Well, you said you wouldn't, and that's a lack of intent. I have a drink to shut that conflict down.
Yeah.
I'm not having a drink because I'm addicted to alcohol. I'm having a drink because I can't tolerate being in conflict with those two competing parts of me.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit. That's why the drink habit always wins, because it shuts it down.
Then it's really like even less about alcohol, right? It's just like, how am I making it okay and normalizing conflict? Like internal conflict is okay.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So you start by this inquiry, and you said you teach people about the higher and lower brain. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, I thought the brain was just a lump. It's just like there's a lump in my head, and I just lost the brain lottery. That was kind of my assessment of my own brain. It was just like, I don't know, I just didn't get a very good one, or I got one that like always wants more. So Obviously there are, I'm not an expert on the brain. There are many, many parts of the brain, but I think just understanding at a very basic level, we have a lower brain that is concerned with the immediate moment. It does not care about tomorrow. It does not care about the future. It cares about right now. And that's a good thing, actually, right? That lower brain is really helpful for survival, but it cares about right now. It cares about finding pleasure, avoiding pain. It wants to do things efficiently. It wants to save energy. Now, thankfully, we also have a higher brain. We have that prefrontal cortex. We have that ability, that part of ourselves that can think about tomorrow and our goals and our dreams and our future. And it can weigh pros and cons, and it can get curious and ask questions. Like, we have both parts of the brain, and that's actually an amazing thing. If we start to understand, hey, how am I going to manage this lower brain? So, I also talk about it like the toddler. Like, how are you going to manage when the toddler is freaking out? The toddler, right? Like, like watch my own children. It's like they want what they want when they want it. And trying to have like an intellectual conversation with them about why they shouldn't really want it. And this is not how we behave. Like, you're not going to get anywhere. As opposed to, okay, I have this higher brain. I have this adult brain. What am I going to do in this situation to navigate the tantrum that is actually going to be useful? Giving in, probably not so useful, because then what does the toddler learn? It's like, oh, this is how I get my way. This is a good thing.
So the higher brain is the one that you're using to tolerate the urge.
Yeah.
And to ride the wave. And the lower brain is the one that is going, oh, sunset, desire boundary equals gin and
this is what we
tonic.
want.
Yeah, this is what I want.
You've taught me when we watch the sunset, I get a drink. This is what we do, right? I remembered. See? I reminded you. I saw a sunset and I was like, drink. Like, lower brain is doing its job.
Oh my God. That's so helpful.
Because it's like, I think we all really understand, like, we're not going to have like an intellectual conversation with the toddler.
No, you're basically going to go, I understand that you're upset. And that feeling or desire is value. But that feeling or desire is true.
Yep.
And that's not what we're doing right now.
That's not what we're doing. And I know this is hard, and I'm going to be here with you, and I'm going to stay by your side. You're not in trouble. You're not doing anything wrong. But I'm going to help you see yourself through to the other side. And you know what? It still will probably be a little uncomfortable. But so much less uncomfortable than like, why are you throwing a tantrum? You're not supposed to be having a tantrum right now.
Is there any, I know you don't tell people what to do, but is there any prescribed method? Like when a client that you're working with says, okay, I want to try to tolerate the urges. I want to try to notice when the lower and the upper brain are in conflict and rely on the upper brain to get me through this moment where I'm going to go to a baseball game and I'm not going to order a beer. Is there anything that you tell people to do? Like, for 5 days, don't have a drink, or do you talk about specific scenarios? Like, how do you get somebody to really start practicing this? Because I can also see how this, if you've been in conflict for a long time, this could become one of those things where you think about it a lot, but you don't actually try it.
Right. So I think that the process always starts with, we got to learn something. We got to learn about how the brain works. We got to learn some of these tools. I have people take a 30-day break from drinking.
Okay.
And I believe it's very different than kind of like a dry January or a sober October, because what I'm always telling people is the 30 days, I want you to focus on using the tools. Yes, we are using the tools to say no, but I want you to focus on, like, this is me going all in on trying out all these techniques, all the techniques to manage my urges, all the techniques to talk back to my excuses. I'm going to be using these tools, and I'm going to be discovering some work better than others, right? So I always have to be in this place of assessing and adjusting. Did that work? Did that not work? I think a lot of times what happens, dry January, there can be a lot of benefits, but the point is making it 30 days. And I'm like, listen, we're doing these 30 days it doesn't matter if you drink on day number 2. That's good data, right? That means something didn't work. Let's look at what didn't work. Let's examine that and let's figure out what we need to do to prepare. Now, I will tell you, that's a huge mindset shift for people because a lot of people, they say I'm all or nothing when it comes to drinking. I actually think they're all or nothing about commitment, right? It's kind of like I either was committed and I did it right and gold star, or I broke my commitment and now it's like, okay, why bother, right? I made a mistake, so now I get to have as much as I want. And it's kind of like learning how to change means developing a different relationship with commitment. Like, okay, yesterday.
Wait, say that again.
Learning how to change means developing a different relationship with commitment. You can't have an all or nothing relationship with commitment. It can't be, I was good, I was committed, and I followed through and I was good, or I broke my commitment and I was bad. So, that mindset, you're screwed.
So what do you do with that person who says, okay, we're going to do the 30 days of not drinking and I'm going to try the tools? And day 8 rolls around and it's a beautiful sunset. Or it's a really bad day at work. Or you get really, really horrible news. The last time I wasn't drinking, I got news that a friend of ours died. And I was like, fuck this shit. I'm having a cocktail. So if I were doing the 30 days with you, what is the data? Like, what can I learn from that day where I didn't keep my commitment to myself?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a process, right, that I have people go through to actually look back and understand what was happening in the moment, right? Like when you were saying, fuck this shit, what was going on? What were you saying, fuck this shit to?
Life being hard, commitment being hard, sticking to my 30-day promise being hard. Probably if I go a little, that's at the surface. If I go a little bit deeper, it was being really pissed off and really sad that my friend had died and wanting to just like numb it out, like not have to feel anything, and sticking to a commitment or changing, like developing those new neural paths. That's hard work. And so I did not want to have to work hard at like sticking to a promise when all I wanted to do was fucking have a drink and lay down on the couch and cry about my friend.
Yeah. I mean, so all of a sudden we get to see it like through the lens of like, oh, it was sadness. It was grief. It was the belief that like this emotion is too big. It's too much. I can't handle it. I don't want to be with it. I shouldn't have to be with it, which also so normal.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, of course your brain went to the thing that it's like, I know how we get out. Like, I know the shortcut. Here's the shortcut to not have to feel our emotions. We have the drink.
That's the lower brain, right?
Yeah.
That's the lower brain going, I recognize this pattern.
Right. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, this wasn't me breaking my commitment and being bad. This was me in the moment of having all of this pain and sadness bubble up, not feeling like I had an alternative for how to manage it or handle it.
How does recognizing that help you have a stronger muscle when it comes to commitment? Well, because you're right, because I'm sitting here going, I totally agree with you. All or nothing when it comes to commitment. You're either good or you're bad. You either have integrity or you don't. You either stick to your promises or you're a fuck up and you never will. Like, like that kind of thinking. And if I take on a 30-day challenge and I fuck it up on day 12, then I fucked up the whole thing.
Right. But remember, what did I say the goal of the challenge was?
It's not to not drink for 30 days?
No, I know. It's like,
isn't it to not drink?
It's not drinking, right? We said not drinking. It's not drinking.
The goal was to use the tools.
Use the tools. I'm
but I didn't
committing
lose
to
the
using
tools,
the
so I
tool.
actually didn't do the challenge. See how quick I am to like go bad, Mel.
Okay, so now we don't. So like this happens on day 2. So day 3, we can't go back to using the tools.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. And we just make progress so much faster, right? When we're not, it's kind of like, oh, well, I tried and that didn't work. Now it was bad. Now I'm going to go into a shame spiral. And I'm either just going to like stop trying, right? Because it's like, see, nothing works. And I'm just
Right.
going to like give up. Or like, I would either go into the like, okay, nothing works. Let's just like F it. I just have permission to like drink and eat and like do all the things that I want to do. Or I would go into the place of like, okay, now we're going to make like this super crazy restrictive rule because I was so bad. But like deep down, I know I can't follow it at all.
People do that on diets nonstop.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
see
exact same
such
thing.
a direct parallel with the way we are all around eating.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to my breakthrough just a couple minutes ago, because I'm starting to see that if you take on a 30-day challenge like this to use the tools and to use the tools to not drink for 30 days as a way to learn and develop the muscle of commitment and understanding yourself better. If you screw up on day 2 or 12 or 28, and then you bash yourself for not having a perfect streak, the likelihood is I would then just bail on the challenge altogether, because the amount of shame I would throw at myself and the conflict I would feel would be so much that I'd want to turn it off by having a drink.
Yeah. Except what if it wasn't a screw up? Like, what if you didn't make a mistake? And I don't mean, I mean, like, what if the decision to say yes to the drink wasn't a mistake? It wasn't a screw up.
Well, how could it not be if I am making a commitment?
Because maybe it's trying to give you insight into something that you are missing, like a skill that you don't have, or a response that you don't have to an excuse, or something that you're, like you're not aware of. Like maybe you don't have the awareness, so I'm using it as a boundary. And maybe it's that moment where you're like, okay, I tried and then it didn't work and I said yes. And then when you go back and look, it's like, oh, like we can't get awareness just by being perfect. I think that's the misconception.
Ooh. You're right, you can't. And I just had another insight. The more I talk to you, the deeper we're going. Here's my big insight. I don't know if we have enough time to talk about this one. I realized that I hate being told what to do.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Even by myself. It's like this rebel thing. You're not going to tell me what to do. Even if I said I want to do this thing, I'm not going to do that thing that I said that I would do. I'll show you. Is that a normal thing that you hear with people?
Yes, this is a huge thing. I often talk to people when they're really struggling. It's like, okay, so what is the language that you're using to say no to the drink? And they're like, well, I'm just saying that I can't have a drink. Okay, when you tell yourself you can't have a drink, how does that make you feel? Pissed off.
Yes.
Yeah, because here's the thing. It's not even true that you can't have a drink.
Explain that.
You're like, but we said we can't. Well, I mean, you're an adult woman. We're living in a country where alcohol is accessible. You have money, arguably, like you have an app. Maybe it will deliver. You have a car. Like, of course you can drink. You're choosing to say no. Like there's such a, like, this is, probably because my father was an English teacher. And so he's always like hounding the importance of words.
Yeah.
But there's such a big difference between like when I tell myself I can't have something versus, okay, I'm choosing not to, and here's why. It still might feel a little uncomfortable for me, but I'm not pissed. I'm not seeking to rebel.
How do you get somebody to have a big enough why for doing this process.
Well, what do you mean when you say a big enough why?
Well, if somebody's already conflicted about whether or not they want to stop drinking or whether or not they want to change their relationship with drinking, and I already see my anger is going to come up, my rebel nature is going to come up, my toddler tantrum throwing bullshit's going to come up, my concern that I can't make the streak is going to come up, and that's going to reveal that I have a huge problem. And yet I still feel drawn to want to take this on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it is? I literally am worried I can't do it.
But what's the thing you're worried that you can't do?
Like stick to not drinking for 30 days, even though I've done it before.
And even though I told you didn't have to do it, like that was not the point.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think
I'm trying to figure out how to do this right. And I'm trying to get to the right
just so
answer.
you won't be mean to yourself. I mean, this is all you're doing, right? You're like, oh, I'm just trying to avoid being an asshole to myself.
Yes.
If you just knew that you weren't going to be mean to yourself, if there wasn't the threat of, okay, when you screw up, right, we're going to like beat you up and say all the nasty, mean things.
I don't know. I've never tried life like that.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to try the 30 days.
It's like that when people are like, I don't want to try.
Not today. Not today. I'm going on a beach vacation. I want to reserving the right to watch a sunset. But no, I'm like really interested in this because I'm tired of the conflict.
Yeah.
Within me. And I think there's peace that's accessible in this. And it is very freeing for somebody like me. And I think for a large number of you listening to go, oh, wait a minute. I don't have to choose between I drink all the time and I don't drink at all. Mm-hmm. I can end the internal conflict that I feel, and I can learn more about urges and desires and tolerating things and operate from my higher brain instead of letting my lower brain control me. And I can get myself out of this cycle of shame and management and conflict and all this shit by simply trying what you're saying for 30 days of using these tools and naming the desire and tolerating the desire and watching your excuses and going a layer deeper. And how do we get information on how to do this?
So you can go to rachelhart.com, my website. And
we're going to link to all this. Yep.
Yeah. I just want to add, I will say that so much of this is just changing your relationship with yourself, right? Because if you knew that you weren't going to be mean to yourself when you weren't perfect, you'd be so much more willing to try it, right? You'd be so much more willing to say, I'm going to do this thing because I'm not going to make it mean that something's wrong with me or I'm broken or see, I really have a problem or I knew I couldn't do it. And that's the thing that I think so often we're actually struggling with is how we talk to ourselves in the moment that we go with the lower brain, as opposed to like, oh, how normal. I don't have to make it mean that I'm broken or something's wrong with me or I'm a bad person.
I also see for myself that I have a story that it's going to be painful. Mm-hmm. And why would this is the story, by the way. It's probably coming from the lower brain. I have this story that it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really painful. I'm not going to have the fun. Like, my work is already like all consuming and I'm going to be missing out on something. And the fact is that I'm missing out on peace with myself and being kind to myself. It's already really hard because I ride this conflict wave within me all the time. And I just silence that shit by having a cocktail and ending the fight. And I'm afraid of the desire and the urge and needing to tolerate that for 2 hours during the window that I normally fix myself a drink on the nights I'm drinking.
I mean, I think this goes back to what you were saying about the big why. Mm-hmm. I don't think it can be all about, improving my physical health. Yes, there are benefits there, but it's like, what's the point of doing this work? What's the point of having a peaceful relationship, with alcohol? Or what's the point of having more authority over my urges? Like, why am I practicing these skills? Who do I want to become? Right? So it's moving towards something that I think, because anything we do, anytime we grow, anytime we build a muscle, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. That's normal. But if it feels like, wah, wah, like I'm just, okay, so I get to be healthier. I had a client once say, when I was working with her on her compelling reasons, I had her say, I just want to be the captain of my own soul. And I was like, yeah.
What are the compelling reasons?
So the compelling reasons are kind of like, can you kind of write down, can you look at different aspects of your life, whether it's your health or your emotional well-being or your relationships. Maybe it's your career or your goals or your faith or money, time, productivity, to like look at all of these areas of your life and start to ask yourself, why would it be worth it for me to change my relationship with alcohol? How would these areas of my life benefit? And I think it's kind of going a little bit beyond, like, I don't know, I mean, my liver would get a break and maybe
I'd
I
sleep
wouldn't
better.
wake up regretful.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
hot flashes wouldn't be so bad. I love the captain of the soul. That really spoke to me because I am somebody who is uber intentional and uber in control and have done so much work on myself as a leader and as a mom and as a wife and as a human and improving my relationship with myself. And I feel like the one area where I have this friction between old and new is this conflict I feel around whether or not I'm going to have a cocktail. And you have been so profoundly helpful because I have realized a couple very liberating things. And I realize I'm about to say something very controversial, particularly for those of you who are sober. But I really profoundly believe I do not have an issue with alcohol after talking with you. I really do. I believe I have a major issue with the desire that's driven by a boundary between work and relaxing and turning my brain off, and the desire to join in and belong with others in moments of celebration, and being able to do a change and neuropathway and habit exercise where I examine this lovingly through these deeper desires that are all tied up with alcohol for some dumb reason. I think it would give me more of a sense that I'm driving the ship in all areas of my life, because this is kind of the one where I feel like, why can't I, like, what the fuck is this about? And I've been focused on the alcohol and the black or white, not the much richer and deeper opportunity of knowing myself in the way that you are helping people around the world who come to you and work with you around their urges and their relationship to their desires and alcohol specifically. You know, one of the reasons why I love you is you have been an expert on the brain and a psychiatrist for 40 years, and you do not focus on what's wrong with us. You literally teach us how to bring out like more awesomeness through brain health. You call it elite brain training. What is that?
Well, a long time ago, I realized I hated the term mental illness. It shames people, it's stigmatizing, and it's wrong. There are brain health issues. And if I can teach you to get your brain healthy, well, your mind is better. People often don't understand that. Your brain, physical functioning of your brain creates your mind. And so if you want to be elite, you're already elite. But the people I work with, everybody wants to be better. Nobody wants to be told they're mental. And so the mission I have on the planet is to end the whole concept of mental illness and create this revolution in brain health which is why I'm so grateful to hang out with you today.
Oh, I wasn't planning on asking you this, but I just was struck by the fact that you distinguished between the brain and the mind. What's the difference between your brain and your mind?
Well, your brain, the physical functioning of your brain, creates your mind. And people get this mixed up all the time, but you just have to think of someone who has Alzheimer's disease. And if you saw the scans of people with Alzheimer's disease, you see that they're wildly damaged. And then that person is no longer fully that person because their brain has been damaged. Or just take COVID.
Mm-hmm.
People who get COVID in the next 4 months have a 25% chance of having a new onset psychiatric illness because COVID causes inflammation in the brain. And then I was on the Kardashian show recently, and Kendall came to see me, and she's like, after I got COVID, I'm so anxious. But if you look at the physical functioning of her brain, her emotional centers are on fire. And so people really need to know, if you want a healthy mind, the first thing to have is a healthy brain.
And when you say a healthy brain, so that makes sense to me, Dr. N, first of all, especially the Alzheimer's example. It makes sense to me that when the physical structure and functioning of your brain is impacted, of course it has an impact on the state of your mind. And so are you saying that absolutely anybody can improve the physical health of their brain, and that will have an impact on your happiness, your performance, and your mental health?
Everything. And it happens quickly. So for example, if you get better sleep tonight, your mind can be better tomorrow. If you get drunk tonight, your mind's going to be worse tomorrow. And because those both have a direct impact on the physical functioning of your brain.
Wow. Like, it's interesting because you're right. There is so much information and so many conversations out there about mental health, but you have this revolutionary approach of teaching all of us how to take better care of our brain and how to improve our brain itself and how that has a direct impact. So I want to start at the very beginning because, you've been doing this for 40 years. You are, in my opinion, the world's leading expert on the brain. And can you give us just a 101 on the brain and what you want anybody and everybody to know about the brain? And I want you to speak directly, Dr. Amen, to somebody who may be listening who's never thought about this topic before.
So your brain is involved in everything you do, how you think, how you feel, how you act, how you get along with other people. It's the organ of intelligence, character, and every single decision you make. And when your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain is troubled for whatever reason, you're sadder, sicker, poorer, because your decisions aren't as good. And the very first step in getting a healthy brain is developing a concept I call brain envy. I always say Freud was wrong. Penis envy is not the cause of anybody's problem. I haven't seen it once in 40 years. It's brain envy is what you want. You want to love the 3 pounds of fat between your ears. Today I'm in Miami, but I usually live in Newport Beach, where we have more plastic surgeons than almost anywhere in the world, because people care more about their faces, their breasts, their bellies, and their butts than they do their brain. And that's insane, because it's your brain that makes you attractive. It's your brain that makes you happy. It's your brain that keeps you purposeful, or it's your brain that is the organ of rage. And so getting your brain right is critical. And it's these 3 steps: brain envy, got to care, avoid anything that hurts it, know the list. And quite frankly, most second graders would get a 90% if you gave them 100 things that hurt their brain. And then the third thing is regularly do things that help it. And I worked with BJ Fogg for 6 months. He runs a persuasive tech lab at Stanford on how people change. And we develop tiny habits. You know, what's the smallest thing you can do today that will make the biggest difference? And the mother tiny habit is whenever you go to do something today, ask yourself, takes 3 seconds. Ask yourself, is this good for my brain or bad for it? And if you can answer that with information and love of yourself, love of your family, love of your mission, you're going to just start making better decisions because you care about the organ that makes you, you.
Wow. All right, let me unpack this. So number 1, brain envy is this idea of actually caring about the health of your brain. And so do you recommend that you have somebody in mind that you envy? Like, clearly I envy you because you take incredible care of your brain. But is it just this concept that you just actually have to wake up and realize that what's in between your ears is the most important aspect of your health and wellness, period? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And number 2, you then said that there are these micro habits that you have developed, one of which is asking yourself literally throughout the day, is this good or bad for my brain? So let me just role play that one real quick. Because you said that, like 90% of second graders can answer the question correctly almost all of the time, but we adults get it terribly wrong. So let's just say it's breakfast time. So how do you use this to start to make better choices that help your brain? Like, do you literally go, okay, am I having a cup of coffee or a glass of water? Am I eating like a big piece of toast with tons of butter and all this crap on it? Am I taking my supplements? Like, how does this play out in somebody's day-to-day life, Dr. Amen?
So I used to play a game with my daughter when she was little. Her name is Chloe. And we called it Chloe's game. And I would say blueberries. And she would say 2 thumbs up, God's candy. And then I would say Frosted Flakes. She'd go, way too much sugar. Or avocados, 2 thumbs up, God's butter. Or hitting a soccer ball with your head. And she would just roll her eyes like, brain is soft, skull is hard. That would be so stupid. and so if you think of the standard American diet, sad, almost everything's bad for your brain. From the toast in the morning, to the sugar cereals, to the donuts, to the pastries, to the coffee with sugar and milk in it. No, those things are not great for the health of your brain. But if you did intermittent fasting and you sort of skip breakfast, well, that's good for your brain.
Why is that? Why is intermittent fasting good for the brain?
Because it helps your brain clean up the trash that builds up from the day before. There's a term called autophagy, which is cells start to eat the extra trash that built up the day before. And so if you don't sleep, you don't have enough time for the cleaning crew to come and sort of clean up your brain. Intermittent fasting gives you a little bit more time to do that. So breakfast is marketing, and it's actually not essential. Now, for people who might have hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, then breakfast really is important. And kids who have ADD, for example, if they have protein in the morning, their medication lasts longer throughout the day. And when you and I were growing up, things like sausage and eggs were common for breakfast, where now, because everybody's on the run, it's sugar-laden cereals, juice. That was the only thing the second graders got wrong when I tested them. So I gave them a list of 20 things and I'm like, good for your brain or bad for it. And the only thing they got wrong was orange juice, which they put in the good category, but it's clearly in the bad category, because when is it rational to have the sugar from 4 oranges? It's not rational.
That's true. It makes a lot of sense. What are 3 micro habits that have the biggest impact on the health of your brain, other than asking yourself, is this good or bad for my brain?
So I start every day with today is going to be a great day. Because once you get the physical functioning of your brain healthy, you then have to program it. And so I knew I was going to talk to you. It's the first thing that came up in my mind. So I start every day. And if you have children, it's really good to do this at breakfast, which is, if you have breakfast, so why is today going to be a great day for you? Directing your mind, which for many people, because of evolution, they wake up in a negative state. It puts your brain in a positive state. And then my favorite of all the habits I do is when I go to bed at night, I say a prayer and then I go, what went well today? And I go on a treasure hunt. And I actually start from the very moment I woke up looking for what was right about the day. And I've done this now 7 or 8 years. And even the night my dad died about 2.5 years ago, and it was an awful, awful day. I did it because it was my habit, right? The brain is lazy. It does what you nudge it to do. And so it really helped me even in a really hard time. But it's almost my favorite time of the day because, like you, I'm busy and great things will happen and I'll just not really focus on it. But it's that treasure hunt that is just so good. And then I take my supplements every day because we live in a nutrient deficient society. And I always want to give my brain the nutrition it needs so it can serve me rather than derail me.
Is there one supplement that you believe everybody should take for better brain health?
Well, a couple, multiple vitamin, a really high quality multiple vitamin. I make one called Neurovite Plus. Brand new study showed people with memory problems who were headed to darkness when they took a high quality multiple vitamin. Within a matter of months, their memory was better. So,
what?
Yes.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. So you're saying that a high quality multivitamin can not only improve your memory, but if you're sliding on a slippery slope toward memory loss, research shows that it can actually bring memory back?
Yes, brand new research just came out. They're actually comparing it to placebo and cocoa extract, chocolate. And they were hoping the chocolate would do it. It wasn't the chocolate, it was the multiple vitamin. And why I developed Neurovite like I did, it has the same dosages of B6, B12, and folate that decrease the conversion of mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease. Now, I never make a disease claim with supplements, but if this level of B6, B12, and folate did that, I'm going to put those levels in our supplements.
Wow, I'm going to start popping it like candy is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that we link to that study and that we link to the supplements that you make as well, just so that people can check it out. That's incredible. So a multivitamin has a huge impact. I hear a lot about fish oil too.
And that would be number 2. I did a study at Amen Clinics and we found 98% of people had suboptimal levels of omega-3 fatty acids unless they were supplementing, because we don't have the same level of fish consumption we had before. Plus, fish is tricky. Brand new study out of Florida International University, so not very far from where I am today. They looked at bonefish off the coast of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
On average, they had 7 pharmaceutical medications in their tissues. And I'm like, no way. And the most common were antidepressants. So as humans, excrete the medications they take into, waste plants, that gets out into the ocean. And then the fish we eat are impacted by them in a negative way.
Whoa.
So one reason I like high quality fish oil, because it's purified, especially ours, but also omega-3 fatty acids have been found to be good for your heart, good for your brain, good for your hair, good for your skin, good for your eyes.
Why is it good for the brain?
25% of the nerve cell membranes in your brain are made up of omega-3 fatty acids. So if you're deficient, your brain is not going to work as fast and efficiently as it could. And low levels have been associated with all sorts of bad things, from depression to dementia to ADHD.
So you said when you feel like you belong, you have this state of flow. I would also guess that other words that people say is that they're very present.
Yep.
That their minds are not racing ahead, that there is nothing in the moment that you need to manage.
Yeah.
And that there is this peace and freedom.
Like anchoring, like you're calm, you're anchored.
Yep.
There's the absence of the panic or anxiousness or activation.
Yes. And the activation is an interesting word, because I can think to certain friend groups that I was a part of, or certain people I was dating, or certain classes, for example, that I was taking in college, or certain jobs that I hated, where the moment I was walking into the classroom or into work, or I was sitting at a table with my supposed friends, in air quotes, I was not anchored and at peace. I was so active in my mind and thinking about other things and worried about something, and not able to feel anchored or at peace in those experiences. And I personally believe, based on the number of people that write in and the size of the audience on our social channels and the podcast, that most people have a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute experience of being activated and not belonging.
Yes.
How does somebody know? And I want you listening to us, I want you to think about, where is the easiest place for somebody to spot this for themselves, so that they can recognize a place in their life where they're not able to be their authentic self, and where they get into this particular part of their life and it's very activating.
So I love this question for so many reasons. So first of all, in my book, We've Got This, I introduce this concept, which I call our core wisdom. And in fact, Mel, if you said to me, Ritu, tell everyone today, what is the number one thing that you did to bring more belonging and authenticity into your life, to bring more ease and joy and flow and peace into your life? What was that?
Ritu, tell us the number one thing that you did to bring more joy and ease and peace into your life. I can pick up what you're putting down, woman. So tell us, because I want to know.
And by the way, I'm a work in progress, everyone. Before you think like, oh wow, Ritu like really has it all figured out and her life is like perfect and whatever, I would tell you like my life feels like it's a fucking mess all the time, and I'm like constantly feeling overwhelmed and. However, I am always anchored to who I am. Like I often will say, here I am anchored. The good swirls around me, the bad, the ugly, everything is swirling around me, and I am anchored. And why? The number one thing that I did to bring more authenticity, belonging, and joy into my life is cultivate what I call my core wisdom.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, right. Good question. So our core wisdom is the inner knowing that pushes us to tune into ourselves and say to ourselves, in any situation, any interaction, any moment we're in, whether it's a moment of joy or a moment of feeling stressed or a moment of deep pain, whatever it is, we tune in and we say to ourselves, what's my mind saying right now? And in a moment of joy, we'll be saying, oh, I feel so good. This feels really good. Oh, I really like her. Like, for example, right now, I'm really enjoying this. But in a stressful moment, it'll say, oh my God, I'm such a loser. See, I'm always a loser. And I can tell he's judging me. And this is why I shouldn't speak. And no, don't speak. And I knew you didn't like me. So we hear the narratives in the head, in the mind. The first thing, we hear the voice. Our core wisdom also pushes us to say, what am I feeling in my body? So let's go back to what I was sharing earlier. Belonging is a feeling. A lack of belonging is a feeling. What is the difference between fitting in and actually being who we are? You'll know the difference based on what your body is telling you. So our core wisdom says, in this moment, in this experience, what is my body feeling and sensing? And we start to tune in, we feel the stress in our chest, and we'll feel that we're starting to sweat, and we'll feel the heat on our face. And then coupled with the negative narratives in our head, like you're a loser, you suck, see, don't speak, don't be who you are, they're going to judge you. We hear all of this and feel all of this happening. And in that moment, we leap into using our core wisdom strategies, which include, oh no, negative inner saboteur, I'm not going to let you talk to me that way. And we have our affirmations or our mantras, our self-coaching ready to go, because we're like, no way, Ritu Bhasin, stand in your power. Ritu Bhasin, speak. Or my favorite thing, Ritu Bhasin, you've got this. If you don't speak, who will? So then my affirmations and mantras start going, but then my body is still activated.
Yeah.
So then I start doing my deep breathing work in that moment. And I start this deep breathing. I take my hands, I rub it on my thighs, or I put it on my chest, rub my fingers. I feel the tears coming up and I say, cry, let it out. Oh, you don't want to do it right here because they're watching, you don't feel comfortable? That's okay. Come back to this later. It's called emotional release or emotional discharge. Goes back to the activation. When we feel like we're being judged, what's actually happening in the body is that as human beings, we're animals and we're governed by our nervous systems. All day long, our nervous systems are clocking for harmful things in the environment. Back in the day, although for some people, I think maybe you, Mel, given how your early morning hikes, we're clocking for bears and forests. Okay, most of us are not clocking for bears and forests. What's happening is, oh, see, you didn't say my name right. Or you rolled your eyes when I was speaking, or you raised your eyebrow when you saw what I was wearing, or you keep interrupting me, or I hear the tone in your voice when you're talking to me versus talking to him. Whatever it is, those disrespects, those hurtful things that we're clocking, the body intakes as attacks. It's not the same as being attacked by a bear, but it doesn't matter. The body's like, see, you don't like me. And that's what causes this activation. And when this is happening, energy is generated in the body, which could show up as trembling, shaking, because we're so shocked or we're so upset, could be tears. But the problem is, as humans, we override. And so what happens is the surge of energy comes up, the activation, the tears want to start. We want to start shaking, trembling, let out a moan or a cry. But we say, no, don't do that because you'll be judged. And then we push those sensations down. Our core wisdom says to us, come back to it. So for example, I literally, after I've had a stressful thing happen, or I'm grieving right now because my mother is dying of Alzheimer's, I have all day long, I feel the grief. And I'm like, no, you're at work, keep going. But I come back to the moment later in the evening and I'll take my memory back to my mom or whatever has happened during the day that's difficult. And then I'll put on my music, my calming music. I'll feel the tears come up and I let the tears out and I cry and let it out. Why? Because I don't want that energy to be trapped in me. But the other thing I'll mention here as it ties to our core wisdom is that I also do this with joy, because I feel like for a lot of us, We have capacity, or we spend a lot of time with the pain. And what we're not doing enough of is spending time with the joy. And joy isn't just a mind thing. Oh, this is so nice, and I'm really enjoying this. And isn't this experience with my family pretty and nice? It's the actually feeling it in my body. And then the very last thing I'll say about core wisdom is that, first of all, it can be developed. The more we do it, we develop it. It's like a muscle, of course. Is that we want to develop our core wisdom so that we build more settled nervous systems, so that we are more settled, so that we're less likely to be activated. And when we are triggered by the horrible shit that happens to us, we're able to address it. And so there, like many experiences of life, there is no blue pill or red pill that we can take and like, oh, look at that, instantly I am healed. It's not like that. It's a journey. But the better we get, the better and better we get, the less rattled we are and the happier we are, or more joyful.
I get completely overwhelmed by taking care of myself. I hate how I look, and I hate how I feel, because nothing ever changes.
So I'm going to assume that this person maybe is talking about, I hate how I look physically. So I have a lot of body consciousness, things like that. So the first thing I would say there is that if that is somehow related to difficulty in showering and doing things like that, because that happens. I don't want to see myself naked in the shower. We're just going to cover the mirrors. You don't need to look in the mirror to shower. I want you to get a smaller pocket mirror so that when you want to put your makeup on, when you want to check a zit, when you want to look at your hair, you can do that in pieces as you need to, but you don't have to look at yourself all day long. And I'm not saying, oh, that's going to cure the way you feel about yourself, but I am saying that's going to give you some relief today. You should be able to have a place in your life where you get to exist without constantly pondering how you look, where you can have a first person experience of life, not a third person experience where you're always sort of going, what do I look like when I do this? What do I look like when I do that? Then depending on what this is, but this is a good one. One thing, and again, I'd have to know more about this person, but this is just sort of a tangential thing, is that go into your closet and get rid of the things that you bought because you don't think that your body deserves clean, cute clothes. The things you bought just because it covers you, the matronly shit that you bought because you don't think that you deserve to wear XYZ now. Get rid of the things that are 3 sizes too small that you'll never fit into again, but you're going, oh, one day. Like, let's address your closet, because what I found is a lot of times when I was disliking my body, it was not information I was getting from my body, it was information that I was getting from my clothes. It didn't look right on me. It didn't fit right on me. Well, they're clothes. Your body is not made to fit clothes. Clothes are made to fit your body.
Hallelujah. Casey Davis dropping the knowledge again. Say it again.
Your body is not meant to fit into clothes. Clothes are meant to fit your body.
You know, I'm going through menopause, and I know a lot of you see me and you are like, you're really skinny. But my body has freaking changed. And the things that fit me 2 years ago don't fit. I was wearing a pair of jeans yesterday that I absolutely love. They got cute little like cargo things on the side legs. The waist is so damn tight. And I thought to myself, why am I holding on to these? Because I'm waiting for my menopause middle to go down. And yet I'm sitting here in basically a tourniquet around my waist. And it's reminding me all day long that I'm changing and I'm aging. And that makes me feel like something's wrong. And there are, I would say, half of my closet has clothes in it that I actually cannot fit into. And it does, when I walk in, remind me of where I'm not. And I love the analogy that you gave about the fact that life is not like all these little side roads, and some days you're going to get back to the highway. I'm on the leg of the journey at mile 54 with the mile marker, and there's a lot of clothes in this closet that need to be taken out of the trunk of the car that I'm driving and left on the side of the road or in a donation bin, because they're not a part of this stretch of the road trip called life.
And I would also tell that person that You don't have to care about yourself in order to begin caring for yourself.
Ooh, say that again.
You do not have to care about yourself in order to begin how to learn to tenderly care for yourself. So many times we feel as though we don't deserve to be clean, or we don't deserve cute clothes, we don't deserve that shower, we don't deserve to get up and do these things. And I think that when we look at that belief system of I have to wait to like myself before I start treating myself a certain way, it actually happens backwards. We begin with self-compassion and tenderness to care for ourselves, and slowly but surely it helps us to begin to care about ourselves. And I kind of liken this to, if you go to the pound right now and pick up a dog, like, you could pick up the rattiest dog there. There is no dog that's like, oh, this dog deserves XYZ. No, you can go pick up the most behavior prone, yappy, dirty, flea infested dog, and you bring it home. And why do you care for that dog? Because you just decided to. You literally just decided that dog is going to be, you're going to care for that dog. You just decided it was worthy. The dog didn't have to do anything.
Can we break this into just a simple series of actions? Because so many people around the world look in the mirror and see a person that they do not like. In fact, in the research that we did for the High Five Habit, 50% of men and women don't even look at themselves in the mirror. And for somebody that feels such a low level of self-worth that they're unworthy, intellectually, they can get that you can start caring for yourself in a kind and loving way before you feel like you care about yourself. But what are one or two actions for someone listening that gets that intellectually but doesn't know how to put that into physical practice?
Sure. So I think one of the things to remember is that self-esteem is really overrated, and it's actually not connected to like better outcomes in how you feel. That it's self-compassion that is connected to better outcomes in your life. And that's great, because self-compassion doesn't require that you like yourself, because we can show compassion to people we don't like. I do it all the time. I would also say that if you were looking for an action to do,
yes,
some of the things that we've talked about, I think, would work, like the hygiene kits, and just like making things easier for yourself is in itself an act of compassion. It's saying I deserve to access this task. But I also want that person to pick one thing, one little like weird bugaboo about their morning. And I want it to be inconsequential. I don't want it to be big. I want it to be something like, I don't like the way that my feet are cold when I walk from my bed to my bathroom. Or I don't like when I wake up and I have to be chilly when I take the dog out first thing in the morning. I don't like that I have to sit there and make like something really simple. Mm-hmm. And I want you to pick that one thing, and I want you to start doing it for yourself at night.
Meaning what? So give me an example.
So I want you to go, before you go to bed, I want you to move a pair of slippers in front of your bed. Or I want you to move a robe by the back door. Or I want you to set your coffee to automatically make coffee. And I don't want it to be dishes. I don't want it to be cleaning. I don't want it to be laundry. I want it to be something specifically that has no reflection on, oh, you're doing good, right? So, oh, I cleaned my kitchen because I deserve it. No. Something that literally you experience an immediate, oh, that does feel good. Just that one thing.
Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.